movie Ken Park, it's close from kids. How would you compare the two movies?
Well, it's a companion piece to kids, really. I mean, when I made Kids, everybody said, "Where are the parents?" And I said, "Wait for Ken Park. They're in Ken Park." So, Kids was about kids when the parents weren't around in their own secret world, and Ken Park is about families, parents and children, and it's about how all of us have to survive our families, whether they're good families or bad families or messed up families. All of us have to, at some point, get past that and survive our families.
There's no such thing as good families.
I can't hear you.
In the movies, there's no such things as good families.
Well, no, they're pretty dysfunctional families.
It's the least we can say.
Yeah. I had all these stories that I wanted to tell about families and about these kids, and I decided to put them all together in one film. So they're all there.
Where do you get the stories? Where does it come from?
Well, two of the stories are based on people I know very well, so they're right on true stories about a couple of friends of mine. The other two characters are based on things I've read and things I've seen about people, things that happen. These are all, based in reality, real life, and I think the trick was to make it as authentic as possible in the film, and I think it works.
You see, that was really, really amazing in Kids was the connection that you had with the kids themselves. Would you say that after that you made the movie, it was much difficult to get in contact with the real kids because you were seen as a filmmaker?
Not really, I mean, I kind of did the same thing in this film. The kids in this film are, once again, non-professionals. They'd never acted before, and they're incredible. They are really something, and I think that I'm able to find real kids walking in the street and put them in films, and I think that they kind of know me through my work. There's a reference point, so they kind of, when I meet them and tell them what I want to do, they know the work I've done, and they trust me and I trust them, and there's an honesty there, and I think something special happens between the young actors and myself.
How did you persuade them to go this far?
Well, I told them what I wanted, and we talked about it, and I made sure they were okay with it, and and made sure that they wanted to do it, and we rehearsed, and they got to know each other, and bonded, and felt very comfortable with each other, and later on smoked cigarettes and talked, and so when we actually shot, and there were other people in the room, they were comfortable. They were probably more comfortable than anybody else in the room, and because it's a process. It's not just, you just don't throw people together and turn the camera. I mean, it was well thought out and rehearsed, and not that it wasn't difficult. It's all hard to do. It's all difficult, but that's what I do.
How do you pass the difficulty when it's a sex scene like the scene where the guy is jerking off and this scene like that?
Well, James Ransone, who plays Tate, I met him in New York. He's the only actor out of New York. He had a little experience as an actor. Everybody else had never acted before, but PJ had, I met PJ, he wanted to do it, wanted to do the role, and I met him a year before we did the film, so he had a year to prepare. And we did it obviously in one take. So he was ready, but it was a difficult, emotionally devastating performance. But an incredible. You got to want to do it. He's a courageous young actor and a terrific actor. Really amazing.
You have no boundaries. You never say to yourself, "I go too far."
Well, I'm an, yeah. You know, that's funny. I do. I look. I say, man, maybe you've gone too far. I always think I've gone too far, but as an artist, I don't think in those terms. I mean, I come from the art world, so, you make work and you show work, and in the art world, it's fine. But this is different, and when you're making film, you're reaching such a bigger audience, and you're reaching the public, and there's all these rules. But as an artist, I don't think in terms of rules. I never think about what you can't do, what you're not supposed to do. I mean, I just, do it. This is a film that has an emotional honesty, and it has a visual honesty. And if you're making a film that has emotional and visual honesty, and then you come to scenes and you turn the camera away or go to close-up or shut the door, then you're not being honest. And I wanted this film to be totally honest. And if some scenes are startling, that's just the way it is. I'm not trying to. I'm truthfully not doing things to shock. I'm doing things. I'm telling stories that I think need to be told, that aren't told, that you read about in the paper every day, that people that this happens to. Especially today in the information age, everybody knows everything. We know this is going on. So I want to show it. I mean, if I could see these stories somewhere else, I don't think I'd have to make them. But, I feel a need to tell these stories. And sometimes I think, gee, why can't I just, make a nice, light, airheaded comedy? And maybe I will someday. But this is what I want to do now.
Pretty strange way you shoot the sex scene. Sometimes it's like a symbol of all the despair, and sometimes it's a symbol of all the hope. How would you say that you treated sex in the movie?
Well, you seem to be very hung up on sex here. The adults are like using sex in the most inappropriate, abusive way. They're using sex to satisfy their own emotional needs, their own needs. And they're using their kids, which is really wrong, And kids who have been abused and really fucked with this way, usually at the end of the film, they're going to be just like total, basket cases. They're going to be, no hope, no future, totally devastated. I wanted to show that these kids will survive or have a good chance at survival. And the last scene in the movie is about that. It's about they have each other, and they connect to each other, and they're connecting through sex in the best way, in the most innocent, pure way, to each other. And they're talking about their dreams and their hopes, and they're talking about utopian societies. And they're making love to each other in the most beautiful way. And I thought that this is the way the film should end, and I thought that this is the way to have an uplifting ending, to show that maybe these kids will be okay because they have each other after what has happened to them, with their parents. And that was my plan. That was my idea, and I think it works. I mean, but I mean, those are just two scenes through the film. I mean, there's a lot of other scenes in the film, and I think everything. I mean, I think everything blends together. I mean, it's part of the work. They're not just thrown in there just to have a sex scene. Obviously, as you say, it works. I mean, it's part of work.
Do you have a lot of reactions from teenagers and kids saying that, okay, you got it, this is exactly what we feel, or what do kids tell you?
Yeah, I started making films. I made my first film because I wanted to make a film that kids could see and say, this isn't bullshit. Maybe it's not me, but it feels right. This feels right. And they said that, and kids came up to me and said, it's not like a movie, it's like real life, So that's very satisfying for me. And in my other films, I've gotten that kind of reaction. And I think in this film, I'll also get the same reaction. I mean, no one's seen the film yet. It's just been at it was at Venice and now Toronto. So it's really brand new, but um, but yeah, I think I'm the only filmmaker working right now that kids can really maybe trust.
Since kids from there, do you feel that the situation kind of evolved for these kids, for the kids? Is it getting better or worse?
Well, I think I don't know. I don't think the films are going to change the world. I mean, I think that I'm
No,
just.
not to the film, but from your observation to this generation. Because there's like, 8 years in between. 6 years?
It's interesting. I think that there's definitely kind of a scene now because of that film, because of that first film. I know a lot of the kids who were in the film, who acted in the film, now have careers, because of the film, which I'm really happy about. I mean, Chloe Sevigny was Rosario Dawson and Leo Fitzpatrick and John Abrahams. They all have careers, and I think that in the new film Ken Park, that there are young actors that are going to have careers. I mean, James Van Soner plays Tate, is amazing. Tiffany Lemos, who is the girl in the film, who plays Peaches, is really a talented young actress. And Stephen Jasso, who was a skater in a skate park, and I saw him skating, and I said, gee, that kid looks like the way I'd like Claude to look. And I went up to him, and he was just skating around. I put him in the movie, and he's terrific. He's such a natural actor. I mean, I think he has a career also if he wants it. And so I'm really, pleased that maybe I've opened up the world a bit for some of these kids.
Did you have more difficulties shooting the parents and telling them story?
Well, the parents are all professional actors, seasoned professional actors, and really great. We have Wade Williams, we have Amanda Plummer, we have Maeve Quinlan, we have Julio Oscar Machosa, really good actors. And I always wanted to mix non-actors with professional actors. And I'd been told by really good directors that you can't do that, but I thought you could. And what happened was that it took the professional actors into places where it was fresh and new for them, where they weren't expecting to go. They told me, they said, if I'm working with another professional actor, I know where they're going to go, and if I don't know where they're going to go, they go somewhere that's familiar to me because of all the training, right? And I've been doing this. But with these kids are so open and honest, they take me places where, all of a sudden I'm in a place I've never been before, and it's so freeing, and liberating. And it was very exciting for them and good for them. And it worked. It worked, really, really well in the film, as you see. I mean, the interaction between the young actors and the adults is amazing.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur.
Thank you very much.
So I met Larry about 10 years ago in Graz, Austria. And Robert Frank and Larry were the two photographers that I was most influential on me growing up. And
Why?
Pardon?
Why?
Oh, because of their imagery, because the immediacy and what that they personalized a documentary reportage imagery, that it was a personal point of view of what you were seeing that was so distinctive. And that it had a certain experiential level to it. You knew those images were coming from an interior world. So they weren't just capturing an exterior world. So when I met Larry at this, it was an exhibit of his at an art festival, I said to him at dinner, because we all went out together, your books are like films. Have you ever thought about making a film? And he said, hey man, I always wanted to make a film. How do you make a film? And I said, oh, it's easy. Let's just hang out together. So we both were into the skateboard world, because I was a skater when I was younger. And we hung out with these kids with High 8 and video. And I said to Larry, had you ever kept like diaries of your childhood or stories that were, that you'd photograph? And he said he had. So I said, well, let's take some of your stories, and because we're into the skateboard world, so we researched the skateboard and actually where we actually filmed in Visalia. And we came up with this material, and then we found Harmony. I had worked with Harmony as a PA in a Light Sleeper, a Paul Schrader film, and inadvertently Larry had met Harmony in a parking, said, I think this kid can write. He's got a script he wrote. So we read his first script, and we said, let's give him the material and see what happens. And that was kind of the evolution of our working relationship. And I was doing it to help Larry out, and I said we co-directed. And now 5 films later, he's helping me out. So it was a good...
Do you feel there's a connection between a big connection between kids and this movie, not in terms of the way it was done, but maybe more in the story itself, in the plot itself, and the characters themselves?
Well, how about structurally? You also, because it's a collage kind of?
Yeah, I was more talking about the nature of the characters themselves. Would you feel that they are very close from the kids of kids?
I don't know. I'm so in the world of Ken Park, it's hard for me to relate it to another aspect of Larry's work. You know, that's...
One of the things that is very amazing with Ken Park is that it's always beautifully shot, and the shots themselves are always giving the meaning to the scene. If it's very desperate, the shot is very desperate. If it's beautiful, like at the end, it's a shot of really beautifulness. How did you work on that?
Well, I didn't want to do the kind of dogma style that's become in fashion, or the cinema verite, because I come out of the tradition of cinema verite, and I feel it's been overused. You know, just because people want to say now, even in the Hollywood language, that this is reality, that if it's handhold available light, that we're going to capture some emotional realism. I think that just becomes a cliche, a visual cliche like any other technique. So I always try to go against what I feel is the obvious, and also because I come out of that background. I used to work with the Maisel brothers. I didn't want to ghettoize the imagery, because I feel it's almost a disservice for why we had to make those films like that. You know, it comes out of the tradition of Jean Rouch and Chris Marker, who I greatly respect. So it offends me even to see commercials, fashion photography, doing kind of called gritty reality or heroin chic, you know. So I wanted to look at this world in a somewhat poetic way, I hope, where there was a certain respect for the world that the kids and the families live in, that there is a kind of beauty to it. And so I didn't want to over-romanticize it, but I wanted to put it in language of how we see, let's say, more conventional films, Hollywood, the way Hollywood wants to see their imagery, but they don't see the content of the imagery. I thought it would be more disturbing that way, or more relevant to show that way. It's what we're not allowed to see.
But is there no danger that it would be too beautiful, sometimes too perfect? When you shoot a scene that is very, very difficult to watch, when the father gets into the room, and it's always so well
I hope it's not beauty for beauty's sake. I dwelled on more my impression of the way Eastern European films are shot, where the camera follows the action, where the camera is more a participant as another actor in the room, or the audience, and I'm watching the scene as it evolves, and I'm responding. So all the light is coming from sources that are natural sources through the window. So I'm implementing the light that was in that space. I'm not trying to over-romanticize it.
Just before the interview, we were saying that Americans won't be able to get the sex aspect of the movie. Can you tell me a little more about that, and what do you expect of the reaction?
What I find interesting is that they only see intimacy or sex as one thing. They don't see the difference between predatory sex and nurturing or healthy sex. And the sex is used kind of as a metaphor for the character's emotional needs. And if you only get hung up about seeing the sexuality in the film, then they're missing the point of the film.
it's a very pessimistic way of seeing parents and parenthood. Would you say that there is no other way? Obviously, there is other way, but is that it's very difficult to find the good
Well,
way to do it?
I don't think all the parents in it are monsters, and if anything, we humanize even the parents that aren't able to fulfill their own emotional needs. That we try to show them as fallible, as frail. In other words, what I think the film makes a statement about, if we want to say it's a statement, is that we all need to grow up as children or adolescents and as adults. That we all have a responsibility to grow up, and that's what we're dealing with. We're not trying to set up or stack, that this is a bad person. They just don't have the tools to handle with their own emotional needs.
When you show a clip from Jerry Springer, is it a way to say that there's a responsibility from the surroundings of these people?
Well, I think that's an aspect of that it's used, I said once, the kind of the theater of cruelty, that's an exploitive way to use our emotional problems. That we can look at television and think, oh, we're better than that person. And so I think that doesn't help people resolve what their problems are. It just kind of objectifies them.
How to get all these actors, all these young actors who are semi-pro or even not pro at all, to go this far? How did you get them to go this far in emotion and in...
I think kids today are much more honest than my generation, and maybe their generation will even be more honest than they are. But they're around pornography and sexuality from a much earlier age than I was. So they felt very natural. They understood the emotional context of the films. And also these kids are out with video cameras recording themselves, in their tricks and their life. So it's so available now, video and digital cameras, that they're very comfortable with the media. So for them, they just entered that role because of who they were themselves, and they could do that.
My question was not only about the sexual aspect of but the characters themselves. Playing a character like this one may be kind of disturbing for these young guys.
I think they all could dwell on things in their own life that they felt, that they didn't have to make the leap. That's why Larry and I wanted to use real kids and not actors, because we felt there would be an emotional resonancy to their performance. And because I come out of documentary, I like working naturalistically with non-actors. The parents are all actors, which I felt gave a different rhythm to the performance between them, and then helped the actors work in a different way.
What kind of reaction do you get here in Toronto? How does people take the
Well, generally I find people under 30 get the film, and people over 30 have to question the methodology of how we made the film and why we had to have this kind of sexuality in the film. But it's the sexuality in the film is not violating anyone. Like I find advertising and commercials and fashion much more predatory and exploiting a female body or sensibility than what we're ever doing. I think if people are upset about it, it's dealing with male sexuality. There's never a problem with female sexuality. In fact, actually the film starts seeing Rhonda seducing her daughter's boyfriend, and I've never gotten a complaint about that. But when the film develops, without telling all the story, then people get upset. So I find, so then I find it interesting. It's still the last taboo is to show anything about male sexuality.
There's also this scene that I really, really like. It's the scene of the dinner, all together at the lunch, all together at the table with all this weight.
Yes, well,
inside the scene.
That for me is one of the reasons why I want to direct, is to have more control over the image, because Larry and I believe and trust images can convey ideas in storytelling. And there's a scene that purely through gesture and what's intimated is what that scene's about. And there's a few other scenes like that, like when her husband comes home and they're talking, did you pick up the cleaning? And it's everything that's happening between the lines. So for me, that was what I loved about working on this film, is that we could explore visually how to tell ideas without being driven by dialogue, a 3-act narrative with a catharsis that's a resolution to solve a problem. You know, we can ask questions without answers, and maybe people can come away from the film and ask questions themselves.
Because on this scene, which is practically really well done, we know everything. We
Absolutely,
know that everybody
yeah.
knows, and this conveying feelings and emotion only through images. Do you feel it's only possible in independent movies and in a small movie?
I hope not, but it certainly gives you the most freedom. I mean, we had a very long shooting schedule because I knew and Larry knew that was the one thing we needed for the performance. I had a very small crew. I operated and lit the film, and that's the freedom you have. And I never think that's some kind of negative or I can't think of the term. I would much rather make a smaller film and tell my story than have all the lights in the world and the army behind you, because all they do is get in the way to make the film.
Okay. Merci beaucoup, monsieur.
Merci.
Well, 4 years ago, basically, to make the long story short, all of the kids in the movie Kids I had known growing up and in Bully. I mean, you know, New York's a very small scene, and he used to hang out within that scene. But then Justin Pierce, who was a friend of mine who was in Kids, who passed away like a couple years ago, we were looking for a poster, and I happened to go into the store looking for a poster, and Larry happened to have an exhibition there. And I said, hey, where's this poster? To the sale lady. Oh, you can just ask him, he's right here. I go, hey, where's this, where's this poster? I'm looking for it. And then I just kept running into him. And then he invited me and this other kid named James Rensone to a movie. And that kid happened to play Tate. So I think he kind of had the idea, but he never really approached me until the movie started, because Peaches was the last character to be cast. I think, and you know, in the script, they were looking for a Latin actress, and there's not that many in Hollywood, as you know, that are young and that look really young. And one advantage I did have was that I'm 22, but I look like I'm 12, 14. I could easily pass for a very young age person. So I read for the part where I'm crying with the dad. I had no experience, and Ed and Larry were very welcoming. I was kind of scared at first, but then Ed talked to me. He said, I'm really happy that you're doing this part.
It's a very difficult part, it's a very difficult character to get into. How did you manage to do it?
You know what? I was inspired, and I thought to myself, this is the role of a lifetime. I thought to myself, I have the best role in the whole film, because you see Peaches being innocent, and then you see her vulnerable side. Then you see her being a normal teenager, being dominant with her boyfriend, you know, and all of us have done that growing up. Like, oh, let's hide my boyfriend in the closet and wait till my parents leave, or I'm going to the library, but you're not really going. You're going to meet your boyfriend or girlfriend, you know? So I thought that was normal, and the scene at the end is just something that I think that actresses should clamor for a role like that. But I knew girls like that growing up too. Especially the scene with the father having the distorted mind and hiding behind God and trying to put the fear of God into Peaches. And a lot of parents that are religious, I'm not saying all of them, some have distorted views on what religion is. They take it out of context, and instead of being a parent and giving guidance, they say, you're going to burn in hell, you're gay, you're going to burn in hell, and God's going to, ban you, and you're never going to get your wings, and some people may look at that as being really bizarre and weird, but if you grow up in that, you think it's normal. And there's a lot of kids that I've met that have grown up that way. Like, their mother would tell them that they couldn't have sex the first time or the gates of hell would open. Silly stuff, that we laugh at. And I think that's the whole essence of Ken Park. We all have these families. When you're born, you don't choose to be Buddhist or Catholic. You're that way because your parents are Buddhist, Catholic, or they're strict, or they're lenient, or they're druggies. But then you get to a certain point where you have to grow up and you make your own decisions and say, hey, I don't want to be Catholic, And that appealed to me. And I felt like I could represent the girls that were in my neighborhood, the girls that I never was.
You're right, there's a lot of dimensions to the character of Peaches. How did you manage to go from one to the other? For example, the dinner scene when she's so innocent and loving her father, and then after that, the room scene, and the crying and everything. How?
It was easy for me. I know Ed and Larry wouldn't have cast me if they didn't think I was perfect or right for this role, because this movie's been in the works for 12 years, and they're not going to let someone ruin their movie, which this movie, for Ed especially, and Larry, this is Ed's directorial debut. So there aren't really words to describe how I felt. I just fell in love with the character. I felt compassionate towards her, and I just thought it would be awesome because I'm not like that at all. And growing up when you're in middle school, I had a friend named Cherry growing up on my block, and she was a very strict Catholic, and her mom overheard her talking on the phone to her boyfriend, and then she picked the phone up and smashed her in the face. And her mom said that God didn't want her to do that, and it was, you're going to end up getting pregnant if you talk on the phone to a boy, and did that. And could you imagine being in the 6th grade and hearing that? Like, the other parents were talking about it, and they were like, well, if you do that too, it's going to happen to you. And it's just so distorted. I look back and I think, gee, they were weird back then. If you're a parent, you're supposed to be there and guide your children throughout life. I mean, you can't stop them from having sex or, and another element that I could relate to regarding Peaches and her father was the cultural background. Because, if you're French, or if you're Italian, or if you're Russian, you come to America or another country, and you still have those same values. It may be okay where Peach's dad is from to hit their kids, but it's not in America. You know what I mean? Do you understand?
Totally. The Larry and Ed, how would you say that they directed you? How did they work on your performance?
What do you mean?
Did they let you go? Did they give you a lot of advices on how to play Peaches?
Larry gave me a lot of advice. He's like, smile, roll your eyes. And if it wasn't right, they didn't get it right, Ed would be like, you have to, again, one more time. But we didn't do too many takes, though. And, Ed made me feel really welcomed, so that helped a lot. And Larry, we went by the script, but he did give all of us direction.
But was it technical direction or more on the way the character should be and should act? Was it more like smile and do this and do that? Or
he kind of let us be. I think that I know that they looked a long time for the 4 children, and and they knew that the children could play the parts and were into each character. So they did direct us, but most of us, as I speak for myself and the other kids, we were very into our characters. I mean, I put my heart and soul into Peaches, and I think you can see that in the movie. I guess what I'm trying to say is that, Larry did direct me, but I knew I had my own idea. Everyone had their own idea of what the character was like. So we had our own input.
Is it easy to let go a character like Peaches after the shooting?
What do you mean?
Do you keep a lot from her in you?
It was very difficult, but then I just let it go. I felt really bad for her though. But I think it was harder for Larry and Ed and the crew to let go of Peaches because when I did that crying scene, it was very easy for me. I never had any acting experience, but I was like, oh, I can do this. This is fine, and I'll just pretend this is my dad, And Ed and Larry, when we finished the first take, Ed and Larry were crying. They forgot I was Tiffany. They thought I was Peaches. Larry had a napkin and he was crying.
Would you say that you're the same person before doing this movie and after?
That I am the same?
How did that change you?
I don't think it's changed me, really. I've always sort of been, ever since I was little, 5 years old, kind of really eccentric and not doing things I don't want to do, I really wanted to play this part and I had a passion for it.
Do you want to go on acting afterwards?
I wanted to wait until Ken Park was released, and I just want to see what opportunities come up. Of course, I'd love to have a career
What do you
in
expect
acting.
for projects that you're going to get?
You can't really say. It's too premature. I mean, who knows what people are going to think, But there definitely is a market for me because there isn't anyone who looks like me. But if it does happen, God willing, I'm going to go at it full force. And I believe there aren't any limitation as an actor. There aren't any limitations, and people should think outside the box, and that no one's not going to tell me I can't do anything.
Merci beaucoup.